everyone, I'm Sarah and welcome back to my crochet channel. Now today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet my velvet stocking hat, and I really love this pattern. One of the neat things about it is the velvet yarn is a medium weight number 4 yarn, so you can actually use this yarn for any medium weight number 4 hat. Now if you don't have the medium weight number 4 velvet yarn, you can use any medium weight number 4 yarn. And I'm also going to show you how to make this fun and different pom-pom. It's going to make it not be such a mess with velvet yarns. Now you can find this free crochet pattern on my blog, and as always I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. So what you're going to need to make our velvet stocking hat is, of course, you're going to need some velvet yarns. Now I really like these. This is Yarn Bee Velvety Smooth Sparkle. This is Ivory Red, and this one is called Olive. And I like them because they're not the traditional bright red and green colors. They're a little bit different, and I really like that. And the other thing I really liked about this yarn is that it is a medium weight number 4 yarn. Usually your velvets are a number 5, bulky, or 6. This is a medium weight number 4 yarn, so it will work for any of your hat patterns that call for a medium weight number 4 yarn. You're going to need about 3.5 ounces of the ivory if you make the pom-pom out of the ivory, because it takes quite a bit of yarn for that pom-pom. You're also going to need 2 ounces of the ivory and 2 ounces of the red, because we're striping every other row. We're going to be stitching today with our eye hook, which is a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. And then you'll need a needle to weave in your ends, and of course a pair of scissors. Now I don't use a pom-pom maker all the time. I like to use my hand and just wrap it until it's as thick as I want it to be. But you can use a pom-pom maker if you want to for the pom-pom, or you can buy a fuzzy pom-pom. Those are really nice for this type of stocking hat. And so that's totally up to you, but I will show you at the end of the video how I use this velvet yarn and make a nice floofy pom-pom. We're going to begin with the band of our hat on this pattern and then work our way up the top of the hat. So I've got my color, my ivory that I'm using for the band of my hat. I'm going to start with my slip knot, and I'm going to chain 8 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, stitching with velvet yarn can be a little bit tricky because sometimes it's difficult to see those stitches. And remember, this first row of 8 chains need to be stitched just a little bit loose. That will also help you find your stitches. We're going to begin by stitching a half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So there's 1, 2. Yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull that loop through all 3 of those loops. So there's 1, and we'll stitch 1 in each of those remaining chains. All right, so we stitched 1 in the second chain from the hook, and then we stitched 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then that beginning one is 7 half double crochets. We're going to chain 1, and that is row 1. Now, I know again that stitching with velvet yarns can be just a little bit tricky. Take your time, really look at your stitches, and make sure to check that stitch count. All right, let's do row 2. We chained 1, we're going to turn our work, and we're going to be stitching in the back loops only. When you look at the top of your work, you'll see that there are loops on the front, which are facing you, and the loops on the back side that are facing away. And we're going to be stitching in those loops that are facing away. So we'll stitch 1 half double crochet in each of those 7 half double crochets, stitching in the back loops only. And you'll know that you are doing it correctly if you see a line right here and an indentation next to where you put your stitches. One half double crochet in each of the 7 half double crochets, working in the back loop only. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And again, on the back side, all you'll see is just a little bit of an indentation. All right, let's do row 3. And row 3 is basically just repeating what we did for row 2. Here's our loops across. Here's our front loops and our back loops. So we'll stitch 1 half double crochet in each of those back loops. My hook in there. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, let's take a look at it. Here's that line of loops we didn't stitch in. There's that indentation. So now we've only done 3 rows on our hat band. And so what we're going to do is continue to repeat row 2 like we did on row 3 for an additional 48 rows, which will give us a total of 51 rows around for our hat band. So continue to repeat row 2 for an additional 48 more rows. So I continued to repeat row 2 for an additional 48 more rows. And this is again going to get you a hat that's a little bit loose, and it's going to fit about a 22-24 inch head. Keep in mind, this is a very stretchy band. So if you wanted to add rows to make it bigger, keep in mind that it is very stretchy. So now we've got our band as wide as we want it around for our head size. We're going to put the 2 ends together, and we're just going to stitch a single crochet in each of those stitches across, stitching the front and back together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now we're going to chain 3. So now our hat band is all together, round. Be careful not to twist it, because you don't want to twist in your hat. And we'll move that tail of yarn inside and weave that in a little bit later. Now for this next row, row 53, because we did 51 rows, then we did our single crochet row, hooking it together is row 52. We chained 3, and what we're going to do is stitch 1 double crochet in the end of each of those half double crochet rows. So our chain 3 counts as 1. We'll go to the next stitch and stitch a double crochet. Then we'll go to the next and stitch a double crochet. You want to have as many double crochets as you do rows. So we're going to have 52 double crochets for row 53. The key to having a really nice and even row without any holes in here is to stitch in the end of those stitches and not the holes in between. Let me show you. If you stitch down here in this hole, you end up with a hole, and we don't want that on our Christmas hat. All right, so we'll stitch in the end of that stitch, going through those loops on the side there, and that will eliminate the hole. When we're on the top part of this here, we can stitch right in the top of that row. And then the next stitch goes in the next row, and we'll go in those sides of the stitches. Because the main thing is we want it to look nice and neat. All right, so I'm just going to continue working around. I have completed row 53, stitching 1 double crochet in the end of each of my rows of half double crochets. You want to have the same number of double crochets as you did rows. So I have 52 rows, so I have 52 double crochets around. We're going to join to the chain 3 with a slip stitch, but we're not going to chain 3 because we're going to change colors. So we'll go ahead and clip our yarn, and we'll bring in our color 2. And I'm using this green as my color 2. We're going to bring it in. We joined in our color 2, and we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to stitch 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets around. Our chain 3 counts is our first stitch, so we'll go in the next stitch and stitch 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets around. And now we're going to be starting our alternating colors, green and red, around our hat. And once you've done the band and that first row of double crochet, the rest of this hat is a piece of cake, and it'll go really quickly. All right, so I'm just stitching 1 double crochet in each of those double crochets around. No back loops only, just regular double crochets, and I'm using my color 2. I completed row 54, stitching 1 double crochet in each double crochet around with my color 2, which is the olive green. I'm going to join to my chain 3 with a slip stitch. I'm not going to cut this yarn. I'm going to bring in color 3, which is this bright cranberry red, and chain 3. And so what we're going to be doing, because we're going back and forth from green, red, green, red, green, red, we're not going to cut our yarn. We're going to trail it up the inside of our hat. All right, so row 55, we change to color 3, and we're going to double crochet in each of those double crochets, working all the way around this row. And see how that beautiful red pops out against that green? And you can see the sparkle in the yarn as well. All right, so for row 55, we're stitching 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets around with our color 3. And then we'll join back to that chain 3. So I completed that second row of 1 double crochet in each double crochet around in my red. So we have a row of green and a row of red. And so what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat row of green, row of red, row of green, row of red, and we're going to continue this for 6 more rows. So we have a total of 8 rows, 4 green and 4 red. And so we're going to continue to repeat row 54 for 6 additional rows, alternating our colors every other row. So I completed those 6 additional rows. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of green and 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of red. I do want to show you the inside, and this is where we carried our yarn up, because if we didn't do that, we'd have to weave that in every row, but it also looks a lot neater when we just carry our yarn up inside. All right, we are going to continue to alternate our colors every other row. And so now on this next row, row 62, we're going to begin our decrease stitches. So we finished with red in our last row. We're going to bring our olive green back in. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a chain 3. 1, 2, 3 counts as our first double crochet. Then we'll double crochet in the next 2. 1 and 2. Then with the next 2 stitches, we're going to do what's called stitching 2 together, or a double crochet decrease. So we'll yarn over, go in the next stitch and pull up a loop. Then we'll go in the next stitch and pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops instead of 3 like we usually do. We'll yarn over and go through the first 3 stitches. Then we'll yarn over and go through the next 2. And so we decreased by 1 stitch. We stitched the next 2 here together into 1 stitch. So now we're going to stitch 1 double crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll stitch a double crochet decrease, or stitching 2 double crochets together with these next 2. And so we'll repeat this, working all the way around this row. And as we work it, you'll notice that it's already pulling in just a little bit. And we'll continue this, 1 double crochet in the next 3, and stitch the next 2 together in a double crochet decrease. And we'll repeat that all the way around and join back to our chain 3. I completed that row, stitching 1 double crochet in the next 3, and stitching the next 2 together in a double crochet decrease, and repeat. I joined to my chain 3, and now I'm going to bring back in my red, or my color 3. All right, now for this row we're going to chain 3 and just stitch 1 double crochet in each of those stitches around. We're not doing any decreases on this row. So just 1 double crochet in each of those double crochets around. One double crochet in each double crochet around. We'll join back to our chain 3. We completed 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets around, and we joined to our chain 3. Now we're going to bring back in our green, which is our color 2, and chain 3. We're going to be stitching decrease stitches in this row. So our chain 3 counts as 1. We'll double crochet in the next stitch and then stitch 2 double crochets together with a decrease stitch with the next 2. 1 double crochet in the next 2. 1, 2, and then stitch a decrease stitch, or stitching 2 double crochets together with those next 2 stitches. And this is our repeat for this row. 1 double crochet in the next 2, and then our double crochet decrease. And we'll repeat this, working all the way around again, and join back to our chain 3. So we completed that row of 1 double crochet in the next 2, then stitch the 2 together. We joined to our chain 3, and we're going to bring back in our red yarn, or our color 3. Chain 3, and again we're just going to stitch 1 double crochet in each of those double crochets around. One double crochet in each, double crochet around, and again we'll join back to our chain 3. So I completed that row of 1 double crochet in each double crochet around, and I'm actually done with my red yarn, or my color 3. Our last row is done in our color 2. So we'll bring our color 2 up, chain 3, and so now what we're going to do for this last row, and yes, there is fuzz all over my work table. Velvet yarns tend to be fuzzy. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3, then we'll stitch the next 2 double crochets together, 1 double crochet in the next, and then 2 double crochets together in a double crochet decrease. And that's our repeat for this last row. 1 double crochet in the next, and double crochet decrease, or stitching the 2 double crochets together with those next 2. And we'll work this all the way around. And again, join back to our chain 3. So it's 1 double crochet and then 1 double crochet decrease, stitching 2 double crochets together. I have completed that last row of stitching 1 double crochet in the next and stitching the next 2 together, and you can see how the hat has decreased up. All right, now we're going to tie off. We've joined to the chain 3 with our slip stitch, and we're going to tie off, but we're going to leave ourselves about 18 inches of yarn because we're going to use this to gather close the top of our hat. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that off. And then we're going to turn our hat wrong side out. All right, so here is the inside of our hat. You can see where we trailed our yarn up, and this one will need to be weaved in, of course. We're going to take our needle and thread that yarn on our needle. And now we're going to close up our hat. And so what we'll do is we'll just go in and out that last row of stitches. Gently gathering it up. Till we get back around where we started. All right, and then I usually go across, grab some stitches. All right, and then before I tie that off securely, I look at the front, make sure that I like how it's laying, there's no hole or anything. All right, boy, I've got a fuzzy mess from this velvet yarn. All righty, so now I want to make sure this is going to stay secure. So what I do is I kind of make loops like this, and it just pulls it in. One thing you have to remember with velvet yarn, it does break easily if you pull real hard. And so you want to gently make loops around there so it's going to stay put. There we go. Oops, don't want to get my thumb stuck in there. All right, so now I am going to pull this like this. And I'm going to tie it securely. We don't want the top of our hat to come unstitched or open. So I want to make sure, and I'm going to do that last knot I like to do. There we go. All snug and secure. And we'll clip that off. All right, let's flip it over. And you'll notice it is a long hat. It's not to fit like a beanie. It is to fit more like a slouchy. All right, so it looks adorable. I love this hat, but I think it needs a pom-pom. All right, let's make a nice floofy pom-pom. So what I've done here is I've got 2 strands of my yarn because I want it to hold really good, and so I'm going to use 2 strands instead of 1. All right, now I'm going to take the 2 ends of my skein of yarn, and I'm going to begin wrapping it around my hand. And the amount that you wrap is up to you. I'm going to do about 34 or 40 wraps around my hand. So I used 2 strands and wrapped it around my hand about 40 times. And that's because I want a nice big floofy pom-pom. Now, when you're dealing with velvet yarn, I do my pom-poms just a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm going to take these 2 strands and stick it in those loops. And I'm going to tie this securely. Now, you can cut your strands, but when it comes to this type of yarn that's velvet or any of the fun fur or faux fur yarns, I don't cut my loops. What I do is I just start unlooping them from each other like this. And the reason that I don't cut the loops is because they'll all start unfraying, and every time you wear this hat you'll have a mess. All right, so here's a couple of the strands. We're going to cut those just because that's the end, and here's my tie, and I'm going to shake it around, open those loops until I'm happy with how they look. Now, of course, if you're doing this with just a worsted weight yarn, you can cut those loops. This is just what I do for my velvet yarns. And something that you'll notice that starts to happen is the loops begin to wrap around themselves. Okay, and you'll have to work with it a little bit. Spread those loops out separately so they'll start doing that. And the more you separate them and mess with them, the more of those you'll have. And you'll end up with an adorable pom-pom that's not near as messy as if we cut all those loops. So I've got my crochet hook. I'm going to stick it up inside my hat in that center. And I'm going to grab the 2 strands from here and pull that in. And then I'll kind of go on the other side here. We don't want to go back out the same spot. And I'll grab those other 2 strands. All right. Now we'll go inside and we'll tie that so it's not going to come undone. And this is why I like to use 2 strands instead of 1 with velvet yarn, because 1 strand might bust on you, but 2 strands are going to keep it nice and secure. All right, then we'll clip that. We'll flip it over, and you've got a fun pom-pom on the top of your hat. And you can continue to separate those loops until it's the way you want it to look. And the more you move that around, the more you'll see those little curls on those loops. So here is our finished velvet stocking hat with a big floofy pom-pom. It's super easy to make, and the velvet yarn really makes it look fun and festive.